You're listening to Psych to Parent, where we turn brain science into tiny wins at home. I'm Dr. Amy, your not-so-typical school psychologist, mom of two, and endurance athlete. I love a good data set and a diagnostic manual. But I also forget permission slips, overthink IEP emails, and occasionally replay the moment I snapped at my kids in the car. In other words, I'm in the messy middle with you, not above it. This show is for parents of big feeling, big thinking kids who are tired of vague advice and Pinterest perfect behavior charts. Each episode, I'll pull back the curtain on what I see in real evaluations, school meetings, my private practice, and my own kitchen, and translate the research into simple scripts, tiny routines, and nervous system friendly tweaks you can actually use. Think of it as a nervous system rehab meets mindset coaching meets a smart, slightly spicy, non-judgy friend in your earbuds. We'll take one real life challenge at a time and shrink it down into 1 or 2 tiny wins you can start this week. No perfection, no 47-step sticker systems, just small, repeatable shifts that add up over time. Quick legal-ish note in plain English. This podcast is for education and support. It's not therapy, it does not create a clinical relationship, and it's not a substitute for personalized medical or mental health advice. If you're worried about your child's safety or mental health, or your own, please reach out to a trusted professional. Okay, deep breath, drop your shoulders. You're not behind and you're not alone. Let's get psyched to parent. Okay, quick story. Picture this. You open your email and it's one of those messages that makes your stomach drop before you even finish the subject line. It's basically, your child's scores were low. No nuance, no context, no, here's what we're doing about it. And then my personal favorite, some version of hope this help, signed your kid's teacher. And you're sitting there like, helpful how? Helpful like a smoke alarm with no exit plan? Helpful like your car has a tire that's flat? Good luck? And here's the thing. As a school psychologist, I'm not anti-test. I literally give tests for a living. I love good data. I love collecting multiple sources of information. But I need you to hear this clearly. Test scores are not your child. A single score is not the story. And if you leave a meeting feeling like your kid has a list of deficits, we've missed the whole point of the parent-teacher meeting. Because parenting and learning, they happen in real life, in the car line, in the kitchen, in the classroom with 18 other kids, and fluorescent lighting, and sometimes a substitute teacher. So in this episode, I want to bust a myth that keeps parents stuck in panic spirals, that test scores are the only data point that matters, and that they tell us everything we need to know. They don't. And I also want you to walk away with something very practical. How to tell the difference between working memory and attention. Why they look identical at home, and what you can do to support both of them without turning your house into a therapy center. All right, take a breath. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy Patenaude, licensed school psychologist, parent coach, mom of two, and endurance athlete. I work with families of big feeling, big-hearted kiddos. If you are here because you're tired of hearing, they're not paying attention, or you're staring at a test score report from school and thinking, this does not match the kid I live with, you're in the right place. Because in this episode, we're talking about working memory versus attention and why in real life they can look exactly the same. Same behavior, different brain demand. And just so you know what you're getting in this episode, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to help you separate the two in plain language. Attention is the flashlight. Working memory is the sticky pad. So you're not guessing. I think that's so important. Attention, it's the flashlight. Working memory, it's the sticky pad. Then we're going to talk about why your child can look one way at home and totally different at school or on a test. Because same kid, different demands is the story of childhood. And finally, you'll leave with some specific tools like the say it back check, a 3-step visual, and a 5-minute start sprint plus a couple of school scripts so you can make the most of the conversation at school, from concern to an actual plan. All right, let's get into it. I love working with schools, and schools get so many things right. I want to say that very clearly. But sometimes schools make mistakes, just like everybody else. Teachers, educators, administrators. And one of the biggest myths I see is that children's test scores tell the whole story of the child. They don't. All right, let's get into it. If you've been listening for a while, you know one of my favorite ways to talk about kids is that kids are like diamonds. When you think of diamonds, they're rare, precious, loved, and multifaceted. And what schools sometimes do, without meaning to, is they can treat a diamond like it's one flat sticker, like the kid is a reading score, or the kid is a behavior problem, or the kid is an attendance problem, or the kid has an attention concern. Nope, that is one facet, not the whole diamond that's your child. So when a test score doesn't make sense with what you see at home, like your kid can do their math homework correctly with you at home, but the classroom score says low, that doesn't automatically mean your kid is lazy, or that your kid is behind forever, or you missed something, or that the teacher is lying. This means we need context. Here's what I want you to say to yourself when a score freaks you out. This is a snapshot, not a life sentence. And I want you to widen the lens of the camera, because in the school world, good decision-making comes from patterns across multiple data points and not just one number. So you may be wondering, well, what data counts besides test scores? There's a lot of things we can think about. Things like your child's grades over time, work samples, like what does their writing actually look like? Teacher observations. And yes, sometimes those observations might be biased, so we follow up with curious questions. We can look at things like behavior patterns. When does it fall apart for your child? What helps it improve? We look at things like attendance, sleep, stress, medical stuff. We look at what you see as a parent at home, the homework routine, the morning routine, the after-school meltdown zone. Now, when you look at the whole picture, you can stop arguing about whether or not your kid is trying and start asking the real question. What skills are being demanded right now, and what supports does their brain need to meet those demands? And to do that well, we have to separate two things that oftentimes get mashed together constantly: working memory and attention. Now, I want to give you an overview of both of these constructs, working memory and attention, not in a research dissertation kind of way, but in a let me understand this, and I have a way to explain it and understand it for myself as a parent. So let's start with working memory. Working memory is like your brain's mental sticky note or your brain's scratch pad. It's the space where you hold information briefly and use it while you're doing something. It's not long-term memory, not remembering your childhood address. It's more like hold this in your brain long enough to do the thing. Working memory has two main jobs: holding information and then manipulating information. Holding is like go upstairs, get your shoes, and bring your backpack downstairs. Manipulating information is like, here are the numbers 3, 6, 2. Now say them backwards. Or put these steps in order. Or do this math problem in your head. So if you want the parent version, it's this. Working memory is the skill that lets your kid keep the plan in his or her mind while they execute the plan. And here's what working memory problems look like at home. You give 2 to 3 step directions and your kid completes one of them. Or your child comes back to you and asks, what was the other thing? Or your child might start the task and then drift because they lost a thread. Sometimes kids like this forget materials, water bottles, folders, instruments, the library book. Sometimes it's kids who need you to repeat the directions even when they're not being defiant or emotionally dysregulated. Sometimes too, when we have multi-step routines like in the morning, bedtime, homework, It can feel like you are narrating a documentary as a parent. Okay, now socks. Sock on your right foot. Sock on your left foot. Now shoes. Now lunchbox. Now shoes again because we wandered away. And then you found, where are you going? Come back. And you want to pull your hair out. And this is where parents get stuck in the interpretation trap. Because from the outside, working memory struggles can look like your kid's not listening, or they just don't care, or your kid's being oppositional, or your kid's being spacey or careless. But a lot of time, it's not any of that. It's the sticky note fell off. And yes, every brain has limits, even adults, even your very organized partner's brain. But some kids have a smaller sticky note, or their sticky note gets cluttered faster, especially when the task is new, it's stressful, maybe it's timed, a noisy environment, or emotionally loaded. Now, there's one more important nuance with this. Working memory gets worse when your child feels anxious, tired, hungry, overstimulated, or when they're in that after school, I've held it together all day kind of crash. So if your child's teacher says they're fine in the morning and you're like, okay, cool, because at 4:15, I'm living with a tiny chaotic raccoon, both things can be true. Okay, so that's working memory. Think sticky note, scratch pad. Now let's shift our focus and talk about attention, because attention is the funnel that decides what even makes it onto the sticky note in the first place. Attention is the brain's intake system. It's the process that lets you take in information and decide what matters. And attention isn't one thing. It has multiple components. Here are some of the parent-friendly ones that I could come up with. There's 5 I'm going to share with you. Number 1 is alertness. Is the brain awake and ready? Number 2 is selective attention. Can they tune in to the right thing and tune out all the other noise? Number 3 is sustained attention. Can they stick with it long enough to finish? Number 4 is shifting. Can they move attention from one thing to another without melting down? And finally, number 5, inhibition. Can they stop themselves, pause the impulse, especially when something fun is calling their name? So what does attention difficulty look like at home? Well, it can look like a lot of different things. Like your child might be able to focus deeply on things they care about, like Minecraft, Legos, art, or a TV show, but not on homework. They need directions repeated because their brain was on a different channel. They get pulled off task by things like sounds, siblings, pets, their own thoughts. They start again. Oftentimes for these kids, transitions can feel hard, like come to dinner becomes a 12-minute negotiation. They might do things like blurt out, interrupt others, move a lot, or touch everything. Or they can be quiet and look fine, but they're actually drifting, daydreaming. They're mentally gone. And here's a huge point from the research that I want to underline. Not all attention problems are ADHD. Attention can be impacted by a whole host of other things. I think this is why it's so important if you were to seek out professional advice, and this podcast is for informational purposes only, this is not professional advice or therapy, is that you want to work with a clinician who understands children and adolescents and how to differentiate between things like ADHD, anxiety, autism, OCD, because attention challenges can pop up with anxiety, where feelings of worry might hijack the brain, or OCD, where kids' brains get stuck on an obsessive thought. Or there could be stress or trauma, when the child might be hypervigilant, which can look like distractibility. Attention difficulties might actually be a learning disorder. It might have to do with the child being frustrated or avoiding a task or checking out when the work is really hard. There are other things that can impact it too, such as sleep, sensory overload, depression. So it's important for you to hear this as a parent, that there are lots of things that can mimic inattention. That's why we don't diagnose based on one teacher comment or one behavioral checklist. You want a comprehensive evaluation with multiple sources of data and multiple informants so we can see patterns and trends over time. A real ADHD diagnosis looks at patterns over time, across settings, beyond what's expected for a child's age, and then it looks at how those are impacting your child's functioning day to day. Okay, now that we've separated working memory and attention, let's talk about the part that makes people, especially parents, feel crazy when they look identical in real life. Here's the problem. In real life, working memory and attention are like basically BFF. They have like really cute necklaces, they may have a secret handshake. They overlap constantly, and it can be hard to disentangle the two because attention is what lets the information get into the brain, and working memory is what lets you hold and use it. So if your child seems like they're not following instructions, it could be attention, they didn't take in the instruction, or it could be working memory. They took in the instructions, but they couldn't hold them long enough to actually do them. And at home, both look like parents saying things like, I already told you. Why are you standing there? How did you forget that already? Are you listening to me? And this is where I want you to shift from the moral language to brain language. Instead of, they're not trying, I want you to try, their brain lost the thread. Now, why does testing sometimes show something different? Well, usually testing can be one-on-one, structured, quiet. Usually there's something novel about it, focused adult attention, and very clear expectations. And often your child gets immediate feedback. A lot of kids, especially those who crave structure and positive reinforcement, they can perform beautifully in a one-on-one testing session like with a school psychologist like me compared to a busy classroom setting. And let's think about it. The classroom setting is the opposite of testing with a school psychologist. Usually there's 18 to 25 students in the class. There's constant shifting demands. There's noise, movement, social energy. There's longer stretches of independent work. There's fewer immediate check-ins with the classroom teacher. There might be more waiting, or there might be more executive functioning demands that happen all day long. So if your child tests average but struggles in class, that can mean the skills are there, but attention or working memory is getting taxed in the real environment. Or the skill is emerging and needs support to become more automatic. There could also be anxiety or perfectionism, which is interfering with your child's output. Or it could be the classroom instruction hasn't matched your child's learning needs. Or sometimes school fit matters, like the tone, relationships, the expectations. That is why I keep coming back to the same thing. We don't support a score. We support a child. Okay, so now you might be wondering, well, what do we do with this? I want to give you a simple way to triage what you're seeing at home so you can target the right supports. Here are 3 quick questions you can use this week. Question number 1, did they actually take in the directions? If you're not sure, assume they didn't, because attention is the gatekeeper. Question number 2, how many steps is this task really? Oftentimes I see parents think they gave 1 direction, but it's actually 7 micro steps. For example, when you say, get ready for bed, it's not really 1 direction. That's a whole mini marathon of tasks that need to be done, from finishing one activity to getting all the way ready to transition to the bedtime routine. Question number 3, what happens when you externalize the steps? If you put it on a visual or a checklist and suddenly things improve, working memory was a big part of the problem. And if the checklist exists and they still drift or wander or get pulled into everything else, it could be the case that attention and inhibition are likely in the mix too. Most kids we're talking about today are living in the land of both. And that's not a moral failure, that's a brain profile. Now let's get really practical with this. I'm going to give you tools that support working memory, tools that support attention, and the bridge tools that support both. Working memory supports are about one big idea. Stop making your kid's brain hold everything. Put the plan somewhere your child can see it, like literally on a physical sticky note. Here are your go-to tools when it comes to working memory. Externalize the steps. I like using a 3-step visual where you put 3 simple steps on a visual. It can be on a counter, by the backpack, a chart, a checklist. It can be as simple as 1 shoes, 2 lunchbox, 3 out the door for school. Or for bedtime routine, it could be 1, brush your teeth, 2, put your pajamas on, 3, pick a book to read in bed. This is not babysitting. This is scaffolding. This is how we grow our children's executive functioning skills. Number 2, we want to reduce the language load. Instead of a paragraph of instructions, we simplify. 1 step, then check. Then the next step. We try to decrease the amount of words and focus on what's most important to be said. Concise is king. Being concise is key. Next, have your child repeat with a say it back. This is a magical phrase that you can say to your kid. Tell me what we're going to do first. We're not saying this in a snarky, am I going to catch you making a mistake kind of way. It's in a calm coaching way. Because when you say it, it strengthens encoding and it lets you see whether attention or working memory is breaking down for your child. Next, we want to make routines automatic. Routines reduce working memory load because the brain doesn't have to hold what comes next. It's automated. That's why a consistent backpack zone or shoe spot, it's not Pinterest fluff, it's brain science. A final idea is break it down into micro steps. If your kid melts down over homework, sometimes it's not the homework. It's the number of mental plates they're holding at once. Breaking tasks into micro tasks reduces overload. Now let's talk about attention supports, because even the best checklist won't help if attention can't stay with the task long enough to start. Attention supports are about 2 things: helping the brain start and helping the brain stick. Start, stick, start, stick. First strategy is chunking and a timer. It's where we can do something like do a 5-minute start sprint, then a micro break. I love 5 minutes because it's short enough that most kids will agree to it and you can get meaningful work done. You can say, we're doing homework for 5 minutes, not finishing, just starting. When the timer goes off, you can take a quick break. Starting for kids is often the hardest part. If we can get them to initiate, they usually work past the timer. Another strategy is movement before the demand. Before homework or a non-preferred task, doing something like 60 seconds of wall push-ups or jumping jacks, a quick lap around the yard, maybe walking like an animal, a dance break, something. This is not a reward, it's regulation. It helps the brain get alert and it helps the body shift gears. Another strategy is called first then. This is the simplest executive function tool on the earth. It's magic with children. First math page, then snack. First shoes, then iPad. And yes, this is allowed. You're not spoiling your structuring. I love to structure this so the first task is something that they may not want to do, and then it's followed by a more preferred activity next. The last strategy is reduce competing stimuli. Now, if your child is doing their homework next to a TV, a sibling, maybe an open snack buffet, attention is probably going to lose. Kids who have challenges with attention or working memory benefit from having a quiet space, fewer visual distractions, and being able to focus on one material at a time. Okay, now I want to put these together in real life scripts because I don't want you leaving here with concepts and vibes. I want you leaving with words. So here are some parenting scripts that you can use at home. Borrow my words. You can literally read them. All right, script number 1, the say it back. You can say something like, okay, quick check. Tell me what you're going to do first. Now, if they say it wrong, you calmly say, close. First your shoes, then your lunchbox, then out the door to school. Script number 2, a 5-minute start. You don't have to finish. You just have to start. We're doing a 5-minute start. We're doing a 5-minute sprint, and then you get a 2-minute break. Script number 3, movement before demand. Before we start your homework, We're waking up your brain. 1 minute of wall push-ups, then we start. Script number 4, first, then. First, we do the least preferred thing, and then the more preferred thing. First spelling, then Legos. Now let's do the school translator minute where you have the school psych in your back pocket, because a big part of decentering test scores is helping parents translate what's happening at home into school language that actually gets support. If you want school to respond, we have to speak in patterns, context, specific requests, and measurable follow-up. Here's a script you can use in an email or a meeting. We're seeing a consistent pattern with our kiddo, where multi-step directions and independent work are hard to complete without support at home. We are trying strategies at home like visual checklists, chunking with timers, and movement breaks. These seem to help our kiddo. I'd like us to look at attention and working memory demands in the classroom and put a simple support plan in place, like short step-by-step directions with a visual, chunked assignments with quick check-ins with the classroom teacher, and a predictable reinforcement system tied to effort and task completion. Can we agree what data we'll use to monitor our child's progress and set a date in 8 to 12 weeks from now to review what's working and what needs adjusting? Notice what this does. You've named the pattern, you've shared what works at home, and you make specific requests. You ask for data and a review date. That's how you move from tattling to a plan. Okay, I want to zoom out one more time to the ADHD question, because this episode is not about jumping to conclusions about your child from one test score, one behavior, or one teacher comment. I want to hold a both and here. ADHD is real, and it's not a parenting problem. It's a neurodevelopmental condition that affects an individual's attention, impulsivity, and sometimes hyperactivity. And also, attention can look ADHD-ish when it's actually something else, like anxiety, trauma, OCD, or a learning disorder. That's why good evaluation matters, and why your observations at home matter just as much as school observations. And if your child can hyper-focus on preferred tasks, but falls apart on boring tasks, yep, they can still fit the picture of ADHD. But we don't label kids based on vibes. We collect data across settings, over time, from multiple informants like parents, teachers, tutors, and we look at how it impairs them. It impacts their day-to-day functioning. Because again, we don't support a label, we support a child. All right, let's land this plane with tiny wins that you can try this week. Pick one is enough. Tiny win number 1, the say it back check. Tell me what you're going to do first. Tiny win number 2, externalize working memory. Put a 3-step visual on a high traffic area your kid will see consistently. Fridge, kitchen counter, backpack, the mirror in the bathroom, and list the 3 steps they need to complete. Tiny win number 3, chunk and timer. Do a 5-minute start sprint, then a micro break. Tiny win number 4, movement before demand. Wall push-ups, jumping jacks, running laps in the backyard. My kids love a dance party, FYI. Then starting homework. Tiny win number 5, using the phrase first, then. First is the least preferred activity, then the more preferred activity. Pick one is enough, I promise. Before the closing, I want to point you to some resources that match this episode, because if you're in the school email phase you deserve support that's clear and not overwhelming. If this episode hit home, I want you to grab my free resource, the K-12 School Psych in your back pocket. It's designed to help you know what to say, what to ask for, and how to walk into meetings feeling prepared instead of panicked. You can find it linked in the show notes. And 2 quick favors that genuinely help impact the podcast. Favor number 1, share this episode with a friend who might currently be staring at a test score like it's a prophecy. Favor number 2, join my Tiny Wins email list so you can get practical scripts and tools in your inbox. It's linked below in the show notes. Okay, here are my final words to you, my friends. What I want you to remember today is that attention is the funnel, working memory is the sticky note. And when either one is taxed, it can look like not listening or not trying, even when your child is working really hard. You don't have to guess based on one score. Look for patterns. Try one small support. We'll keep making the homeschool puzzle less mysterious together. 1, did it get in? Did it stay? Could they use it question at a time? 1 flashlight versus sticky note reminder at a time. 1 say it back, what's first, check at a time. 1 movement before demand reset at a time. 1 first then that actually works at 7:42 in the morning. And 1 school email that says, this is a snapshot. What are the conditions? What supports are we trying? What data are we collecting? And when do we review it? Without being a novel. And the next time you sit at that tiny round table in that tiny chair, remember, schools have expertise, and you are the expert on your child. Your insight is not extra, it's essential. You're not behind. You're building a partnership, and you're building skills, yours and theirs, 1 small, doable step at a time. Until next time, my friends. Thank you for hanging out with me on Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy, your not so typical school psychologist, and I'm genuinely glad you're here doing this work instead of quietly white knuckling it and blaming yourself. Your tiny win from today's episode is simple. Do not overhaul your entire parenting style. Pick 1 idea, 1 sentence, or 1 tiny shift and try it in a low stakes moment this week. Then notice what changes, even if it is just by 1%. If you want more support, head over to psychtoparent.com. You'll find show notes, simple scripts, and parent-friendly guides that go with these episodes. While you're there, make sure you join the Tiny Wins mailing list so you get weekly brain-based tips, real-life examples from my work with families, and first dibs on new workshops and resources. It's the easiest way for us to stay connected beyond the podcast. If this podcast was helpful, it really does matter when you tap follow or subscribe. Leave a quick review or text it to a friend who is parenting a big-feeling, big-hearted kid too. This podcast is for education and encouragement. It is not therapy, and it's not a substitute for individualized care. If you're worried about your child or yourself, please reach out to a trusted professional in your area. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are building something new, 1 tiny win at a time. I'll see you in the next episode, probably with a cold coffee in hand, cheering you on.